Welcome to the deep dive. We are about to plunge into a stack of sources centered around achieving unlimited sales success, pulling specific insights, models, and strategies, particularly those highlighted in Brian Tracy's work on this very topic. Our goal today, to extract the most potent ideas, the kind of knowledge nuggets that can genuinely transform your sales results, giving you that faster path to being truly well-informed.
Right.
We're covering everything from what makes a top sales mind to the nitty-gritty of planning and building lasting connections.
That's exactly right. The material paints a picture of today's sales environment, acknowledging its challenges, but fundamentally framing it as a space of immense opportunity.
Okay.
It's a blend of understanding timeless human psychology and mastering practical modern methodologies. We'll look at the realities salespeople face now and the enduring principles that separate the truly successful.
It's about getting straight to the core of what matters.
Okay.
Let's dive in.
Yeah.
So let's set the scene. The source material talks about a new world of selling. What are the big shifts it points to?
The sources highlight a few critical realities of the modern market. First, there's simply more competition. You have more sellers vying for the buyer's attention in almost every field.
More noise.
Exactly. Second, selling itself has become more complex. It often requires more meetings, more interactions to close a single deal than maybe in the past.
Okay.
Third, and this is key, the customer is far more demanding and skeptical than ever before.
Demanding and skeptical. Why the change? Is it just because they're online?
That's a huge part of it, yeah. Customers today have unprecedented access to information. They can research products, compare prices globally, read reviews instantly.
Right.
Often they know as much, or sometimes more, about potential solutions than the salesperson does. This empowers them, makes them question claims more readily, and also makes them more cautious.
Cautious how?
Well, they're afraid of making a costly mistake, buying the wrong thing, overpaying, maybe not getting support later. So they tend to delay decisions. There's less inherent urgency, you know?
Okay, so it sounds like a tougher landscape. More noise, more cautious buyers. But the sources also suggest there's massive opportunity within this challenging environment.
Oh, absolutely. One striking statistic mentioned is that a full 5% of all self-made millionaires started their careers in sales.
Wow, 5%?
Yeah, they might have begun without much, but they became exceptionally good, built high incomes, and generated wealth. The powerful takeaway here is pretty simple. If countless others have achieved significant success starting in sales, you can learn the skills and principles to do it too.
That's a compelling point. It makes you wonder, what's the fundamental starting block for learning these skills? It feels like it's not just external techniques, doesn't it?
You've hit on it. The sources place a huge emphasis on internal factors, particularly self-esteem.
Self-esteem, really?
Yeah, the core idea is that someone with high self-esteem can succeed in sales almost anywhere, while someone with low self-esteem will struggle even if the market is booming. It's presented as the foundational psychological element.
And how do you build that? Is it something you're born with, or are there specific steps?
The sources suggest it's definitely something you can build and improve. They list 7 principles for what's called mental fitness for top salespeople.
Okay, like training.
Kind of. Think of it as training for the high-stakes world of sales. You need to cultivate being ambitious, courageous, committed, thoroughly professional, completely responsible, exceptionally well-prepared for every interaction, and a continuous lifelong learner.
Got it.
Focusing on these principles actively shapes how you perceive yourself and your abilities.
One point that really caught my attention in the material is this idea of selling being a default profession for many. What does that mean? And what distinguishes those who just fall into it from those who reach the top?
It means many people find themselves in sales jobs almost by accident, perhaps as a temporary gig while they figure out something else. The sources suggest a large percentage, maybe 80%, treat it this way.
80%, wow.
Yeah, they never fully commit to mastering it, and their careers tend to, well, plateau.
And the top performers, how are they different?
They might also start accidentally, but at some point, they have a profound realization and aha moment.
Ah, right.
They see that by dedicating themselves to becoming truly excellent in sales, they can actually achieve all their financial and personal goals, potentially earning more than many people with extensive formal degrees.
Right.
At that critical moment, they make a conscious decision to be the best they can be and then fully commit to the learning, the practice, and the effort it takes.
So it's that moment of deciding to pursue excellence, not settling for mediocrity. The material compares it to an Olympic athlete training for 7 to 10 years. It highlights that reaching the pinnacle in sales Requires that same level of sustained hard work on oneself and one's craft.
Exactly. And if ambition provides the drive, the sources position courage as the essential fuel because fear is identified as the main barrier.
Fear.
And interestingly, it's not failure itself that holds people back, but the fear of failure. Top salespeople fail constantly, but they aren't paralyzed by it.
Ralph Waldo Emerson's quote about doing the things you fear resonated with me. The idea that doing the feared thing is the only way the fear dies.
It's a powerful concept that applies directly to sales. Fear of failure leads to procrastination, avoidance of calls, avoidance of challenging meetings. As the quote highlights, allowing that fear to dictate your actions means it controls your potential.
How then do the top performers handle rejection, which is just a built-in part of sales? You can't avoid it.
No, you can't. The sources argue that top salespeople see failure and rejection not as roadblocks, but as necessary feedback. They fail more often than average salespeople because they try more often.
Right, more attempts.
Yeah. And a key mental shift is realizing rejection is rarely personal. The prospect is saying no to the offer or the timing, not usually to you as a person.
I was fascinated by the technique mentioned in the sources about intentionally pre-programming your mind to react positively to the first rejection of the day, even to the point of laughing about it.
That reframing is incredibly powerful. It flips the negative emotion associated with no. The material also introduces the 100 calls method, committing to make 100 calls specifically to desensitize yourself to rejection and break through that fear barrier.
Wow, 100 calls.
You understand statistically that every no gets you closer to a yes. The point is, you have to be willing to hear those no's to get to the wins. Beyond self-esteem and courage, deep commitment is a hallmark of top salespeople. This commitment shows up in several key beliefs. They genuinely believe their products or services are the best available for their customers.
Okay, belief in the product.
Yes. They believe they can truly help people improve their lives or businesses, and they believe in their customers, seeing themselves fundamentally as trusted helpers.
That shift from salesperson to helper seems incredibly significant in building trust.
It fundamentally alters the relationship. Another non-negotiable commitment is to continuous learning. The sources strongly advocate for daily reading of sales and business material.
Daily?
Daily. Listening to educational audio programs, especially during commute time or exercise, and attending relevant courses and seminars.
The claim that salespeople can double or triple their results just by reading for 30, 60 minutes a day is pretty compelling. It positions the best in sales not as just smooth talkers, but as relentless students of their craft.
Absolutely. Lifelong learners.
Moving from the internal mindset to the practical execution. The sources talk about personal sales planning. What's the core idea there, framing yourself as a business?
The fundamental concept is brilliant in its simplicity.
Yeah.
View yourself as the CEO of your own personal sales enterprise. You Inc.
You Inc. I like that.
Your ability to earn is your most valuable asset, and it can either grow significantly year after year, like 11% for top performers, the source mentions, or barely budge, like 1% for average performers.
And you have direct control over that growth.
Precisely. The sources emphasize that you essentially decide your own income and sign your own paycheck. If you want to earn more, you need to make more and better sales, and that decision and the effort required are largely within your control. The focus of your personal planning isn't just financial ROI in a traditional business sense, but achieving the highest return on energy, getting the most impact from your mental, emotional, and physical investment each day.
How does the material suggest structuring that planning? It mentions the JOSPO strategy.
Right. JOSPO provides a framework. It stands for goals, objectives, strategies, plans, and activities.
Okay, break that down.
So your goals are your big, long-term targets, like a specific income level for the year. Objectives are the specific, measurable steps you need to take to hit those goals.
It makes sense.
Strategies are the overall approaches or methods you'll use to achieve your objective, listing out all the possible ways to get there and prioritizing them. Plans are the ordered lists or checklists you create to execute your strategies, really emphasizing the power of working from a clear list.
Right, lists are key.
And finally, activities are the daily actions you take, ticking off tasks on your list, implementing your plans and strategies.
This structure seems crucial for avoiding just doing random things, and instead focusing energy where it counts. It suggests you can achieve far more with a written plan than just winging it.
Absolutely. The sources introduce the classic concept of the sales funnel. It starts wide at the top with prospecting, finding potential customers. It narrows in the middle with presenting your solution, and it's narrowest at the bottom with following up and closing. The visual reinforces that you need a large number of initial prospects because only a fraction will make it all the way through to become a paying customer.
So lots in, few out.
Exactly. The example given is needing maybe 20 prospects to get a handful of presentations, leading to maybe 1 or 2 sales in the end.
And the material breaks down the core skills needed at each stage, right? Like specific things to work on.
Yes. It suggests assessing yourself on key areas like prospecting, which is finding qualified potential customers, building rapport and trust, connecting with people, and identifying needs, truly understanding what problems your prospects have that you can solve, often through structured questioning.
Within prospecting, it talks about the hunter versus farmer dynamic. What's that about?
Right. Hunters are focused on aggressively finding new business, new accounts. They might be a smaller percentage of the sales team, but they're responsible for opening a large share of new relationships.
The pioneers?
Kind of. Farmers, on the other hand, are focused on nurturing existing relationships, getting resales, and generating referrals. The sources note it's quite rare to be truly excellent at both. Different skill sets.
Let's hone in on prospecting, because the material calls it possibly the single most vital key to sales success.
It absolutely is. And like any skill, it's learnable, but it goes back to what we discussed earlier. It requires a willingness to hear no repeatedly.
Back to courage.
Back to courage. The sources strongly recommend dedicating the first 1 to 3 hours of your day specifically to prospecting activities, like making calls to set appointments.
First thing in the morning.
Yeah. The key question to start every single workday should be, where is my next sale coming from? And making sure you're actively doing something that answers it.
How does the material define a good prospect? What are the characteristics to look for?
A good prospect has a genuine problem or need that your product or service can solve. Crucially, they must have both the ability to pay and the willingness to pay.
Ability and willingness.
Okay. And ideally, they should be relatively easy to sell to and service after the sale. The source offers a surprising practical tip here. Sometimes your best prospect is in the office right next door, simply because they're easy to get to. Proximity matters.
Huh. Okay. And what about the signs of a poor prospect? When should you, cut your losses?
The signs include showing little interest or perceived benefit, being unresponsive, consistently arguing or complaining, especially about price or quality, or maybe being perfectly happy with their current supplier.
Right.
The advice here is direct. Don't waste valuable time on poor prospects. Every minute spent there is a minute you could be finding someone who is actually a good fit.
I like the emphasis on asking why. Not just why buy this product, but why buy at all? Why buy from us and why buy from me?
Those are powerful questions.
It also points to looking beyond obvious customers to non-customers, like Henry Ford did, finding entirely new markets.
Yes, defining your ideal customer with real clarity, understanding their deepest worries, fears, and aspirations, not just demographics, is essential for focused and effective prospecting.
It's specific.
Very specific. And the point about pace is critical. Consistent, sustainable effort, like making maybe 40 calls every day for a year, is far more productive in the long run than burning out with 100 calls a day for a single month. Consistency plays the averages in your favor.
Right. Marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The material is very clear. In today's market, everything revolves around relationships. How your customer thinks and feels about you, your position in their mind, is the primary driver of whether they buy, how much they negotiate, how quickly they decide, and whether they'll buy again or recommend you.
Your position in their mind. And this connects to the golden triangle of selling, where top salespeople are consistently seen as a friend, an advisor, and a teacher.
Absolutely. Those 3 roles are interconnected and build that crucial position in the customer's mind. You build rapport and trust as a friend. You help them navigate challenges and achieve their goals as a knowledgeable advisor. And you educate them on how to best leverage your solution and understand related market dynamics as a helpful teacher.
The story about IBM in the 1980s is a powerful illustration of that teacher role's importance, isn't it?
It really highlights it. When IBM leadership decided they were purely an engineering company and sort of deprioritized the role of educating customers on how to best utilize their complex mainframes, competitors stepped in, offering strong customer support and training.
And IBM suffered?
Big time. IBM sales suffered significantly until they brought in Lou Gerstner, who recognized the problem and refocused the company on serving and educating the customer. It led to their turnaround. You have to teach.
Reputation is also built in these daily interactions, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the small things.
Entirely. The sources point out that things as simple as being polite, please and thank you, being punctual for meetings, and consistently fulfilling your promises are fundamental building blocks of a strong reputation.
Basics, but crucial.
Absolutely. Everything you do or don't do either enhances or detracts from that reputation with every single customer interaction.
So being that trusted advisor involves deep listening and understanding, showing you get it.
Crucially, it means asking thoughtful questions, listening with rapt attention, which the sources call the highest form of flattery, and demonstrating that you truly grasp their unique situation.
Highest form of flattery. Interesting.
Yeah, and the material observes that customers, being busy, tend to stick with established positive relationships because it's simply easier than the effort required to start over with someone new. Build that trust, and they'll stay.
Loyalty through ease.
In a way, yes. This leads into what the material describes as the new model of selling, built layer by layer. It starts with building trust.
Okay, trust first.
Then accurately identifying needs, followed by presenting solutions tailored to those needs, and finally, confirming or closing the sale. The key insight is that if you excel at the first 3 steps, the closing process becomes much more natural and less high pressure.
Listening really stands out as foundational to that model. Seems like you keep coming back to it.
It's presented as incredibly powerful. Listening with rapt attention creates a significant emotional impact. It makes the customer feel truly valued, heard, and increases their self-esteem in the interaction.
Wow.
This positive feeling then extends to you and your offering. The material's quote here is spot on. Many people have talked themselves out of a sale, but very few people have listened themselves out of a sale.
That's a great line. And the source even connects this to neuroscience, talking about dual hemisphericity. The idea that purchasing decisions are often made more in the right brain, influenced by emotions, stories, images, rather than just cold facts.
Yes, exactly. So truly hearing the customer, understanding their emotional drivers, and connecting on that level through attentive listening can be profoundly more persuasive than just reciting facts or features.
Makes sense.
And taking notes while a customer is speaking is highlighted as a simple action that shows respect and boosts your professional image. Shows you're engaged.
Good tip.
The sources also touch on buyer psychology after the sale. There's often post-purchase anxiety or, buyer's remorse.
Right, that sinking feeling.
Yeah. Customers might call you after buying, not necessarily with a problem, but because they're feeling uncertain and need reassurance they made the right decision. Responding quickly and positively to these calls is vital for reinforcing their confidence.
There's also that fascinating concept of the emotional bank account, where a customer might unconsciously feel they did you a favor by buying, creating a deficit you need to address quickly.
Exactly. You need to immediately make a deposit back into that account through sincere appreciation, like a prompt email, a thank you letter, or even a handwritten card.
A handwritten card. Nice touch.
That reciprocation is important for building the long-term relationship.
And maintaining that relationship after the sale is critical for future business, getting repeat sales.
Absolutely critical. The sources stress the importance of a regular communication schedule, whether it's a call, email, or visit. They even suggest the best way to know how often to check in is simply to ask the customer what worked best for them.
Just ask them. Simple.
Let them guide it. Becoming an expert in relationship building and maintenance is presented as a core skill for success.
The cost of acquiring a new customer is significantly higher than keeping an old one. The sources make a very strong case for prioritizing resales and referrals.
They call it building recommendation nation. The efficiency is undeniable. A sale to a referral takes significantly less time, energy, and cost compared to a cold call, sometimes as little as 1/15 the effort.
1/15, that's huge.
It is. When a trusted friend has recommended you, the customer often walks in already 90% convinced, shortcutting much of the trust-building process.
So customer retention really is the key to unlocking a lot of that potential. It's not just about the first sale.
Fundamentally, the goal is to turn happy customers into enthusiastic advocates who willingly sell for you.
Right.
The sources offer a great exercise. Imagine your income depended only on referrals.
Yep.
How would that change how you treat every single existing customer?
That really reframes the importance of post-sale care. The story about the salesperson who kept key accounts largely through regular visits, just showing up consistently, illustrates that dedication.
It highlights that sometimes the best strategy is simply consistent, reliable personal connection, demonstrating that you value the relationship beyond the initial transaction. The sources also point to the main reasons customers leave, usually poor service or slow, inadequate responses to complaints.
Service failures.
Exactly. The powerful IBM janitor story, whoever answers the phone owns the problem, reinforces the critical importance of rapid, responsible follow-up to customer issues. Fast service builds fierce loyalty. Slow service drives customers away forever.
And the mention of the ultimate question from Fred Reichheld, based on your experience with us, would you recommend us to others, serves as a powerful gauge of how well you're doing in building that loyalty.
Exactly. It's a single question designed to capture customer loyalty and predict referral behavior, leading to the Net Promoter Score, or NPS.
NPS, right.
Which measures the percentage of your customers who are promoters versus detractors. The objective is a high NPS, indicating a strong base of advocates.
Okay, let's shift to consultative selling. How is that framed?
The concept of consultative selling is also heavily featured, positioning yourself not just as someone selling a product, but as an expert consultant who helps clients solve meaningful problems.
Like a doctor, almost.
In a way. And the first step in establishing that credibility is often your appearance and image dressing professionally, looking like a winner, as the source puts it.
And understanding who you're talking to in a business context is vital, right? The different levels of decision makers like technical, user, and VI tier are the very important top officer.
Yes, you absolutely need to understand their different concerns and speak their language. For technical people, it might be specifications. For users, it's ease of use and impact on their daily work.
And the VI too.
But for the VIs, the top decision makers, it's almost always about financial impact, the bottom line.
So you're really presenting yourself as a financial improvement specialist, helping their business financially.
Precisely. Your core value proposition for a business should be identifying problems where your solution provides a clear, measurable financial benefit that significantly outweighs its cost. You're asking about their goals and the obstacles preventing them from achieving them, looking for opportunities to deliver a strong return on investment, or ROI.
And that's where the 90-10 rule for presentations comes in, 90% focusing on those benefits and results, and only 10% on the features or processes.
Exactly. Focus on the what's in it for them. The sources use the IBM mainframe example. Again, they sold based on calculated ROI, or internal rate of return, IRR, boiling it down for executives too. How much money goes in, how much comes out, how fast does it happen, and how sure are those numbers?
Clear, simple financial questions. Positioning yourself as a partner, using we and us, and taking responsibility for the solution's success also seems key to that consultative role.
It signals collaboration and commitment, much like top consulting firms operate. Earning the right to be seen this way requires thorough preparation, deep research into the prospect's company, and being ready to trade valuable information or insights.
Do your homework.
Absolutely. Educating the prospect during the process also reinforces your authority. And sharing stories about the product's development or your company's mission can build an emotional connection and credibility. The sources add that genuine passion for your product and belief in how it helps people can often be the crucial differentiator. People buy belief.
Let's circle back to identifying needs, but perhaps from the doctor of selling perspective the source mentions. That seems important.
That's a powerful analogy. The salesperson acts like a doctor. The first step is diagnosis, asking carefully prepared questions to uncover the customer's real, underlying problems or needs, not just surface-level stuff.
To keeping deeper.
Right. Only after a thorough diagnosis do you move to the prescription or treatment phase presenting your solution. You don't prescribe before you diagnose.
So preparing those questions in advance is critical, not just winging it.
Absolutely. The sources strongly recommend writing down and rehearsing your questions. Using a structured agenda like the spine and ribs method, where key questions are the spine and follow-ups are the ribs, helps keep the conversation focused.
Spine and ribs, I like that visual.
Yeah, it shows you respect their time, boosts your confidence, and builds credibility as a professional consultant.
And the before and after presentation helps visualize the impact. Show them the change.
It's a very effective technique. You paint a clear picture of the customer's current situation before, with all its problems, maybe pains, and then show the desired future state after with your solution implemented. The customer needs to see a significant gap between before and after and believe your solution can bridge it to be motivated to buy.
Makes the value tangible.
Yeah.
Okay, what about objections? Sales resistance.
The sources normalize sales resistance, stating quite plainly that sales don't happen without objections. They should actually be viewed as positive signs.
Positive, really?
Yeah, they indicate interest and that you've touched on something important, often an emotional point of concern for the customer. They're engaging.
I'm not interested
Mhm.
is probably the most common initial resistance. What does the source suggest is behind that, and how do you respond?
Often it simply means the customer isn't fully aware of the benefits, hasn't clearly understood how it applies to them, or it's just a quick, almost reflexive response from someone busy or maybe feeling a bit lazy.
A knee-jerk reaction.
Pretty much. The sources offer polite replies like, "That's perfectly fine. Many people in your situation weren't initially interested either, but after a brief chat, they found it incredibly valuable and are now our best customers." This aims to pique curiosity, not argue.
Okay, try to get them curious. And the inevitable price objections, they always come up.
Always. The core rules provided are crucial. Never argue, never get defensive about your price, and work to isolate the objection to understand the true concern.
Isolated how?
Ask questions like, "Aside from the price, is there anything else holding you back?" Or, "Just so I understand, how far apart are we?" This helps uncover if price is the only issue, or if there's something else hidden underneath.
There's also the preemptive strike on price. Tell me about that.
Yes, a powerful technique. If you know your price is higher, address it up front before the customer brings it up. State the price and then immediately ask, "Would you like to know why it's priced this way?"
Turn it into a value discussion.
Exactly. This can disarm the customer and turn the potential objection into a point of interest, leading you to explain the value that justifies the cost. One sales force reportedly saw a significant jump in sales just using this technique.
And handling how much is it over the phone by delaying the price to focus on setting the appointment.
That's all about controlling the sequence. You acknowledge the question, but gently pivot to setting a meeting where you can properly assess their needs and demonstrate the value, explaining that the price depends on their specific situation, which you can discuss when you meet. Don't give the price in a vacuum.
The sources argue most objections stem from a fuzzy understanding. What does that mean?
Exactly. It means the customer isn't clear on their own problem, the true need, or how the benefits of your solution provide value that clearly justifies the investment. There's confusion somewhere.
So your job is to clarify.
Precisely. The recommended formula for answering objections is straightforward. Respond politely, offer some form of proof, like a testimonial, case study, data. Confirm that you've addressed their concern. Does that make sense? And then confidently continue with your presentation or move toward closing.
Don't let it derail you.
Right. The objection phase is sometimes compared to a sword fight. It can be tiring, and often, once the objections are thoroughly addressed, the customer is mentally ready to finish.
Speaking of finishing, closing the sale, it can feel daunting, but the sources suggest the new model makes it less so if you've done the groundwork, built that trust.
Precisely. If you've built trust, accurately identified needs, and presented a compelling solution that clearly addresses them, the close becomes a much more natural next step, not a high-pressure tactic.
Okay.
The sources list 4 conditions that must be met before you've truly earned the right to ask for the order. The customer genuinely needs what you're selling. They fully understand how it solves their problem. They sincerely believe you, your company, and your product are the best option.
Believe.
And they are convinced the benefits far outweigh the price.
Benefits outweigh price. Okay. Need, understand, believe, value.
If those 4 are met, closing should be straightforward.
What are some of the specific closing techniques mentioned? Any examples?
One example is the authorization close, which is described as low-key and confident. You simply begin filling out the order form and hand it to the customer, saying something like, "If you will just authorize this, we can get started right away."
Get started right away. That's highlighted as a powerful phrase. Why?
It is. It subtly increases the desire to act and makes the decision feel immediate and beneficial. Creates momentum. The sources often suggest using a technique like the order form close after successfully addressing objections, as the customer is often mentally ready to move forward then.
And the common, let me think it over, objection. How do you handle that one?
The suggested approach is to pause. First, agree that it's an important decision. This helps the customer relax. Then gently probe. Ask, "Obviously, you have a good reason for wanting to think this over. Do you mind if I ask what it is?"
Just ask directly but politely.
Yes. The source notes that a polite "may I ask" question is very difficult for someone to refuse. If they still hesitate, you can follow up with, Is it perhaps the price? Or mention another common concern. This helps uncover the real underlying reason for the delay so you can address it.
Don't just accept, think it over.
No, try to understand what needs thinking over. Ultimately, the quality most needed for effective closing, like other stages, is courage. It's a skill developed through practice.
Back to courage again.
It keeps coming up. The sources emphasize that boldness in asking for the order is essential. There's a story about a salesperson whose sales dramatically increased simply by adding a direct, confident closing line at the end. Look, it's a good product, it's a good price, you can really benefit, why don't you just take it? Sometimes directness works.
Interesting. Okay, finally, time management. How does this tie everything together?
Finally, the sources bring it all together by focusing on the critical importance of effective time management for sales professionals. The Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, is central here.
80-20.
Recognizing that likely 80% of your sales will come from 20% of your customers or your products or your focus activities. The core takeaway is to ruthlessly prioritize and focus your time on those high-value areas. Don't spread yourself too thin on low-yield stuff.
And the idea of creative procrastination, what's that?
That's deliberately choosing not to do low-value tasks, pushing them off to ensure you have the time and energy for the high-value ones. It's an intentional focus on what truly drives results, not just staying busy.
So prioritize the important, procrastinate on the trivial.
Exactly. The sources mention studies, like one from Columbia University, suggesting the average salesperson spends surprisingly little time, maybe only 90 minutes out of the day, on actual income-generating activities.
Only 90 minutes? That's shocking.
Yeah, activities like prospecting, presenting, following up, and closing. The rest gets eaten up by things like driving, administrative tasks, internal meetings. You know the drill.
Asking yourself that question every morning, where is my next sale coming from? And letting it guide your first few hours of the day is presented as a simple but powerful way to ensure you're focusing on actual working time.
Right. They even suggest breakfast meetings as a way to connect with busy prospects, deliberately keeping it social initially, which often leads the prospect to suggest a business meeting themselves later. Build rapport first.
Consistency and controlling the sequence of your day seem like vital time management principles as well.
They are. Playing the averages means consistent effort day in and day out. And controlling the sequence means deciding what the most important high-value task is before you start your day, and then doing that first. Tackle the big rock first.
Get the important stuff done.
This ensures you're not just busy, but productive.
The material offers 3 excellent questions for personal management that really cut to the chase. Why exactly am I on the payroll? What are my absolute highest value activities? And what can only I do that, if done well, will make a real difference in my results?
Those questions force clarity and focus. The story about the worst-performing sales branch transforming into the #1 branch simply by mandating more face-to-face time with customers powerfully reinforces that focusing on those core working activities is what matters most.
FaceTime matters.
Your success as the CEO of You, Inc. ultimately comes down to how you choose to spend your time creating and keeping customers. It's largely up to you.
Wow. That was a comprehensive and deeply practical exploration of unlimited sales success principles drawn from these sources. From the crucial role of mindset, courage, and commitment to the practical steps of planning, prospecting, building relationships, handling objections, and managing time effectively, it feels like we've gotten a powerful blueprint.
It's a clear message that exceptional sales results aren't accidental. They're the product of cultivated skills, a strong belief system, and consistent, focused effort directed towards adding genuine value for the customer. It's learnable.
We've unpacked viewing yourself as your own sales corporation, the power of being a friend, advisor, and teacher, the necessity of courage in the face of rejection, and how focusing on building relationships and creating advocates through incredible service can transform your business.
And we've touched on the importance of continuous learning, identifying ideal prospects, mastering the art of listening, understanding buyer psychology, and prioritizing your time on the activities that generate the highest return on your energy. It all links together.
So what does all of this mean for you listening? The material suggests the potential for dramatically increasing your income is available right now. Thinking about everything we've covered, what one principle or skill from this deep dive could you commit to focusing on and applying starting today to make a tangible difference in your sales work?
Yeah, what's the one thing?
What single area will you choose to master next?
Keep applying, keep learning, and keep growing until the next deep dive.